The Nevada desert stretched endlessly, a ribbon of cracked asphalt under a pale orange sky. For Marcus Bennett, a veteran truck driver with 20 years on the road, it was just another haul. The same miles, the same silence, the same hum of tires cutting through nowhere. But that day, something was different. It began faintly, a rattling sound, deep and metallic, coming from somewhere beneath the trailer. Marcus barely noticed it at first, blaming the rough road. But as the hours passed, the sound grew sharper, rhythmic, like something loose was bouncing inside the rig. He turned down the radio and listened. The noise didn't match the engine, the gearbox, or the axle. It came from below the cab specifically, from the secondary fuel tank. He frowned. That tank was only half full. It shouldn't be making a sound like that. For another 50 miles, he tried to ignore it, convincing himself it was just trapped air or debris. But when the sound began echoing through the floor of the cab loud enough to feel through the pedals, unease began to crawl up his spine. By the time he reached a dusty rest stop outside Tonopah, the sun was dipping below the horizon. Marcus parked the truck, killed the engine, and stepped out into the warm desert air. The quiet felt heavier than usual. He crouched beside the tank, his flashlight beam cutting across the metal surface. At first, nothing seemed unusual until he noticed fresh scratches around the access panel. Clean cuts, shiny under the light. They weren't his. He hadn't serviced that tank in months. A chill spread through his chest. He ran his hand over the mark. Someone had tampered with it recently. The bolts had faint tool impressions, too neat, too deliberate to be random wear. "What the hell?" he muttered, standing up. Every instinct told him to leave it alone, but curiosity and years of knowing his machine inside out wouldn't let him. He grabbed a wrench and began loosening the bolts. One by one, the metal creaked as he worked. When the panel finally gave way, a faint sloshing sound came from inside. Marcus leaned closer, listening. The smell of diesel was strong, sharp, almost nauseating. Something shifted within the tank. The noise wasn't mechanical. It was the sound of something moving, heart-pounding. Marcus grabbed a small cutting tool from his toolbox and scored a narrow slit along the tank's edge. Diesel spilled out in a thin, shimmering line, soaking into the dirt beneath his boots. Then, through the beam of his flashlight, he saw something pale floating in the dark fuel. At first, it looked like a piece of cloth or plastic, but as the liquid settled, the shape became clearer. It wasn't one object, it was several, tightly wrapped and sealed in layers of thick plastic, each roughly the size of a brick. Marcus blinked, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Then the realization hit. Someone had hidden something inside his truck. He staggered backward, his breath catching in his throat. The flashlight trembled in his hand as the truth sank in. He wasn't alone on this trip, not really. Someone had used it. Marcus stumbled backward, his boots scraping against the gravel as the smell of diesel thickened in the air. His pulse hammered in his ear. For a few seconds, he just stood there, frozen, staring at the cut he had made, the shimmering surface of the fuel, and those ghostly white packages floating inside. His mind raced. Drugs? Money? Something worse? Whatever it was, it didn't belong to him. Hands shaking, he grabbed his phone and punched in 3 numbers. 911. What's your emergency? This is Marcus Bennett, he said, voice trembling. I'm at a rest stop off Highway 95 near mile marker 214. There's something inside my fuel tank. I think it's drugs. The dispatcher's calm tone didn't match his panic. Sir, step away from the vehicle. Stay where you are. Officers are on the way. He dropped the phone from his ear and took several steps back, his flashlight still trained on the open slit in the tank. The packages bumped gently against the edges as if mocking him. The realization hit him hard. Someone had used his truck as a mule. Within 20 minutes, the quiet desert was shattered by sirens. 2 patrol cars pulled in, followed by an unmarked black SUV. Flashing lights painted the sand in red and blue. Officers stepped out cautiously, weapons holstered but ready. Marcus raised his hands. It's not mine, he said immediately, his voice cracking. I swear to God it's not mine. Step back, sir. One officer ordered, motioning toward the ground. Another approached the tank with a long flashlight. When the beam hit the fuel, the truth became undeniable. The officer's expression hardened. Call narcotics, he said quietly. They worked for hours under floodlights, draining the tank into secure containers and pulling the packages out one by one. Diesel dripped from the plastic wraps, the smell mixing with the dry scent of the desert. By the end, there were 16 packages laid out neatly on the pavement, every one of them sealed tight and labeled with faint black symbols. A senior investigator from the DEA knelt beside them. He tore one open, dipped a test strip, and watched it change color instantly. MDMA, he said flatly. Thousands of pills, street value over $500,000. Marcus sat on the curb, staring blankly at the highway lights in the distance. How? He muttered. How did they get in there? The agent stood up. They didn't need your permission. Someone modified your rig during an overnight stop, probably swapped the panel while you were sleeping. They used your secondary tank as a courier system. Low risk, high payout. So they were going to pick it up later? Marcus asked quietly. The agent nodded. Most likely at your next delivery point. You were just the middleman. Marcus buried his face in his hands, the weight of it all pressing down. He had driven that truck for half his life. He trusted it. It was part of him. Now, it had been turned into a weapon for something he wanted no part of. As dawn broke over the desert, officers loaded the evidence into the SUV. One of them approached Marcus. You did the right thing calling us, he said. If you hadn't opened that tank, this would have gone very differently. Marcus nodded weakly, watching as his truck was sealed off with yellow tape. The morning sun glinted off the side of the rig, once a symbol of freedom. Now a reminder that even on the open road, danger can ride with you unseen. He lit a cigarette, his hands still trembling. I'm done with long hauls, he said quietly. The highway stretched out in front of him, silent again, but no longer empty.